All right, we're starting. So I'm going to wait for just a minute and let people show up before I start talking. You can see I've changed the view for now. I don't usually talk in front of the Mushin scroll, but I'm going to talk in front of there tonight. Who knows, next week maybe I'll talk in the lobby and just get real crazy with it. Tonight's talk is from, basically I thought, I'm tired of talking about coronavirus. I want to talk about something else. And I came up with this idea of talking about a passage from Budo Secrets, which, to be honest, is probably going to start being a talk about coronavirus anyways, but we're going to do it. So I was reading through this book the other day. It's really wonderful. We sell it at the dojo. If you guys haven't read it yet, you're going to have to read it for a test later on anyways. But this is a collection of stories and different things from famous martial artists, kind of similar to like Zen Flesh, Zen Bones is a collection of Zen stories. This is more specifically about martial arts. And there's a section of it that I was drawn to because of the general hardship that we're all facing. It's called the 7 Hardships for Martial Training. And there's actually a little bit before this that are selections from Miyamoto Musashi. He talked about some of these things in the Book of 5 Rings, and I might go back and talk about them too. But these are like things that you should do, and it's interesting because I don't like to talk from a perspective of you should do this or you should not do that, because I think that first of all, like there are no real absolutes in life. I mean, you could say, well, you should never murder somebody, and that's probably true. But in general, once you start dealing in absolutes, then you're kind of, on one level getting a little bit lazy, and on another just not recognizing the practicality of life. But these are not necessarily like you have to do this, but these are some good suggestions is what I'm going to suggest they are. I'm going to suggest they are suggestions. So without any further ado, since we've got 3 people watching now, we're going to do the 7 hardships for martial training. Number 1, experience cold, heat, and rain by scaling high mountains and crossing deep valleys. So I really like this one. There was in our class earlier today, we have 2 students who are practicing from up in Mammoth, and they were practicing outside, and they're Lohan students, so they're wearing their cut-off Lohan uniform without sleeves, and they're practicing outside in the snow. And it made me think of this. I actually pulled this out and read this list to them after they were done with class. It reminded me of practicing back in Michigan. For those of you guys who don't know how snow works, usually snow is a thing that comes to your house and falls on it. And here in California, we have to drive to get to snow, but in Michigan, it would just come and land on us. And when there was enough snow, Sifu Brown would take us outside in the parking lot and say, here you go. Your mats are the concrete, and the snow on top may or may not offer enough padding for you to fall on. We'll find out. And so we went. We would spar in the snow and the ice, and it was a lot of fun. This is not supposed to be fun when you're enduring the 7 hardships of martial training. Experience cold, heat, and rain by scaling high mountains and crossing deep valleys. This is like honing the mind and honing the spirit and honing the self. When we get put through it, this makes us harder, and this makes us more solid. And these 7 hardships are kind of meant to make you more solid and more, tempered like steel, so that you don't break if you actually are in a self-defense situation in a fight. The second one is rest in open fields and sleep in the mountains. And that sounds wonderful. Obviously, we're not allowed to do that right now. You have to rest in your apartment or your house, and sleep also in your apartment or in your house. So it's like we have all of these kind of cushy things that surround us in our lives today, in the world today, that didn't exist back in the day, like when these were written by these were not written by Musashi. This is from something else. But it's funny, even then, any way that people could kind of live that cushy life, be a little bit more comfortable, they would take it. And what this author is trying to explain is that kind of weakens you on some level, it makes you less ready for things. And so instead of resting inside in a nice bed, you're going to rest outside in the fields and sleep in the mountains, sleep on a hard rock, use a rock for a pillow and use a rock for your bed. And it makes the spirit more ready and able to handle whatever it is that there is for us to handle. I went bed shopping a couple of years ago because my back hurts, because that's what happens to you when you get over 30 years old. Something hurts, and if you're a martial artist, it sometimes is multiple things hurting. And I remember I spent an entire afternoon picking out, not the most expensive, because beds are like $20,000 if you get a Tempur-Pedic, but decently expensive bed, and I thought, this is just going to be like a write-off for me. It's a professional necessity. It's an expense that I must undergo because it's part of my profession. I've got to take care of my back. And I sat in this bed. I laid down in this bed, and they had it hooked up to a machine. And this machine had a display that had like a silhouette for your body, and it showed like, oh, your shoulders are kind of pressing in a little bit hard to this part of the bed, and so the shoulders are like colored red. And when you lay on your side, your hip on this side is colored red, so that's going to hurt. And so you go around to a couple different beds and kind of figure out what the best kind of firmness is for you and all that stuff. And I think that, first of all, I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that, because I did it, and my bed is a lot more comfortable than it used to be. But it's kind of hilarious because, there are so many of us that just literally can't sleep. We can't do the basic human function of falling asleep unless our bed is like tuned to exactly fit our body, and it's messed up. So if you can, someday when the coronavirus is over, rest in open fields and sleep in the mountains. The third one is never store money or food and never wear warm clothes. So never store money or food is funny right now, and I was obviously reminded of everybody hoarding food and toilet paper and money. Nope, if you had money in the stock market, you got no money anymore, so I guess you don't have to worry about hoarding that. But it's kind of like the same idea of, if you have something set aside, you don't have to worry about it. You're always kind of okay. And this one I'm not even going to suggest that you do. You should have money and you should have food, whatever you can kind of set aside so that you can focus on doing the things that you need to focus on. But it's an interesting concept of, if you don't have food ready for you, just waiting at home in a refrigerator or in a freezer or in a pantry, and you're kind of out there in the world always looking like, how am I going to get food? Am I going to hunt my food today? Am I going to pick it off of the ground? Am I going to steal it from somebody? I don't know. But it keeps you ready, keeps you in the moment. And you can imagine that way back in the day, before we had any method of actually storing food, it was a very different experience. If you were out in the world and you saw food, you had to take it. You had to get it by whatever means possible. If you didn't, you were going to die. And we are super lucky that we're not in that situation anymore. And still, you shouldn't be taking more than you need right now. I know several people who, as soon as the news of the coronavirus hit, they went to the store and they got as much as they could. And in fact, I went to the store probably like the first or second day after they announced that everything was really shutting down. And you guys heard I went to Whole Foods, and like all of the snacks were gone. There was just fresh produce, which I'm fine with, but all the fried food and all of the canned food and all of the snacks and everything was just gone completely. So I got a bunch of lettuce and ate it. The next one is, sorry, I got to go back to the second part of that. Number 3 was never wear warm clothes. That's not what I do at all. I wear warm clothes all the time. Right now in Southern California, it's raining and it's like 50 degrees outside. It's cold. But the truth is, we should probably not bundle up quite as much as we always do. There was this story about Yogananda, and I can't remember if it was. So he was at a river with some of his like devotees, some of his students, and he noticed that one of them was really afraid of jumping in the water. If this were me, it would be because the water is so cold that I just don't want to jump in. But this student, and I'm butchering the story because I can't remember exactly what happened in it, but basically Yogananda said something really wise and convinced the student to just jump in, and they realized that it's not that bad. Like, I did it, I'm here, and I've survived. And the fear of the thing is most of the time the whole thing, all of the fear that we have, the whole bad experience of this hardship is something that we've built up in our minds. So you look outside and you can see it's raining, and I know that it's cold, so you start to kind of dread the idea of going outside. But once you're actually in it, you'll be amazed. You know, the body adapts, the mind adapts, and you're fine. You survive that. So if we can kind of get ourselves to go beyond the fear and just endure it, then it kind of disappears like nothing. I am still amazed every time I get in the ocean that I don't die, and it's not that bad after the first 30 seconds. So same thing, not wearing warm clothes. The next one is travel everywhere to engage in contests. So he's talking about you literally just go all around the country and get into fights. And this is definitely not something that I advocate doing as a martial artist, because as a martial artist, you want to be able to avoid the fight. You only put yourself in that situation if it's absolutely necessary. But I get the point, because if you're traveling around and you're fighting lots of different people, you're kind of testing yourself in lots of different situations, that does make you better. That does hone your skills. That does hone your mind. And this is like, it's really difficult for us to do partner work, although we're getting pretty good at it now in the dojo and the Zoom classes. We're getting to the point where our partner classes are pretty decent. But when you're practicing in person in the dojo, there's nothing like it. Having a great partner, having lots of different partners, and being able to practice things on a super high level is incredible. And it really causes you to be very focused and in the moment. When you're switching quickly between partners of different sizes and different skill levels, it puts you in a totally different state of mind, rather than, some of you guys in class, you know who you are, you always grab the same person. Whenever I say, grab a partner about your size, you go to the same exact person, and you're like, I feel comfortable with him, I know he's not going to hurt me, or, she's going to go easy on me, so it's going to be fine. And then some of you are like, I got to get the hardest person in class. I'm going to go find somebody who's really going to put me through the ringer tonight, somebody who's going to challenge me. And that is a great attitude to have towards finding a partner. So it's something that we can do, traveling all around. You're obviously not allowed to do that right now, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to go to 100 different schools or 100 different countries. You can, but you can also just, in one school that has lots of great partners, you can find plenty of people to practice with and get a much more well-rounded, complete experience that will push you to become as great as possible. So kind of look for that. Who is this person today? And it's not always the person that you expect. The obvious person is like, well, I'm in class and there's a red sash, so I'm going to grab that person because I know that they're good and I know they're going to push me. Maybe, But there's also something to be said about grabbing a beginner whose technique is not maybe as clean, who doesn't really understand like the right way to throw a technique and doesn't understand all of the right ways to be a great partner, and that might challenge you in a different way from what you're used to. So look for the challenge and look for the contest, as they say, in every partner that you can have. The next one is reside in graveyards, haunted houses, or among wild beasts. And I guess you're living in these places. Reside in graveyards. I don't know how you can live in a graveyard, but it reminds me of the Tibetan Buddhist monks who like to go and meditate in the graveyard. And you sit, and as soon as you start to open your eyes, you look around and you see, ooh, my time is limited. Go right back to a stronger meditation. It really puts you in the mood. There's a certain kind of vibration in a graveyard that makes you want to seize the day and kind of lights a fire under your butt. Haunted houses. If you find a haunted house, I guess you should spend some time in it. It'll make things interesting. Wild beasts. So spending time around, in dangerous places and around dangerous things and dangerous people. It's, on the one hand, it's about kind of, as I said before, like honing you and hardening you and tempering you. But there's also like, there's wisdom in the wild. There's wisdom in nature, and this is something that martial artists for as long as martial artists have been around have been doing, is kind of going into nature and watching what wild animals do. I think this author is talking more about like be around things that could kill you. Don't just watch them, but be able to defend yourself against something that could kill you. But I'm not going to necessarily tell you to do that. But looking at and seeing, what a natural thing does, what a creature does that is not all wrapped up in the ego and is not always second guessing itself. What does that thing do? How does it act? How does it behave? How does it live its life? And there's certainly wisdom in that. This one's kind of related to that. Number 6 is associate with dangerous criminals. And that'll always keep life interesting. If you are not just always around the totally prim and proper, but you're in that place of danger, you're there where like you don't really know what's going to happen next, I guess that would make you a better martial artist. And number 7 is live off the land among peasants. So it's kind of a funny way of putting it, I guess. But live off the land among peasants. Just be real, and not always hoarding food and not up in your ivory castle or your ivory tower. Be able to just like be there and live. I don't really know what else to say about that, but it sounds nice. Thinking of anybody as a peasant kind of seems wrong, so I'm not going to say it like that. But I'll say that being among people is sometimes the most fun that you'll have if you're traveling around. When I was in China, I went to visit Shaolin Temple, and it was a very short visit. But my favorite part of that trip was actually not going to the temple. It was in the city that was close by, and I forget exactly the city is. I want to say it's Songsu, and I'm probably butchering that. But I was walking through the city, and at that point, this was over 10 years ago, I think. They had never really seen white people there, or it was so rare. Everyone would just like look and stare at me everywhere that I was in China at that point, but especially there near Shaolin. And I went into a restaurant that was not a restaurant. It was an alleyway between two buildings, and the roof was a tarp that was just slung overhead. And in the middle of the alley was just like a witch's cauldron brewing over the fire. And it was just like a husband and wife running it, and there were some kids running around and kind of horsing around. And I just sat there with my friend who I was on the trip with. And so the guy was just like had a ball of dough, and he was just shaving noodles into this giant boiling pot. And they brought us over there was no menu. It was just like sit down and eat whatever they're cooking, and it was one of the most delicious meals that I've had in my entire life. And that's saying something because I love all food. But it was a heaping plate like this of tiny, salty sea snails. And I don't like snails, but I liked those. They were delicious. And then the soup with the hand kind of the handmade noodles was incredible. And it was great just kind of being there. And these kids, I don't know where they lived. I don't know if they even like had a real place to call home, but they were just like arm wrestling each other. And I sat across. This one kid was bigger. There were like younger kids, maybe 9, 10, and then a bigger kind of beefier 12-year-old looking kid, and he was just arm wrestling and beating everybody. And I sat down next to him or across from him on the table and just put my elbow down like this, and we arm wrestled. And he was a strong kid because he had probably been doing all these 7 hardships, and he like almost got me left-handed. He almost beat me. I feel like when we are really trying to experience life, a big part of it is just being with people, and we have the people who we love, who we surround ourselves with. And right now, maybe we are kind of getting tired of those people who we're surrounded with, and we are only allowed to see the same people. But when it's gone, I'm sure you're going to be like, I got to get away from you. I'm going out, and I'm going to talk to some other people and be in the world. And in my experience, especially traveling, just like meeting people and being with people who you haven't been with before, and just kind of trying to experience something new from somebody else's point of view. Kind of like what I was talking about last week. There is an entire world out there, and that world might exist with somebody who is just right next to you or right down the street from you. They have a totally different life. They have a totally different way of experiencing things. And to get the full experience of life, I think is kind of like the same idea of getting as many great partners as you can, is to just spend time with people and try to see things from their point of view and get the full picture. So I think I'm pretty much out of time. I'm not going to go through these other ones by Musashi, but if you guys have this book, you should read it, and it's probably available somewhere if you can't come to the dojo right now because you're not allowed to. I'm sure you can get it somewhere else and read through all of them. They're wonderful. We are going through our own kind of hardship right now, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of enjoying it. I love just being inside sometimes, and I still get to interact with most of the same people that I was interacting with before. It's just online on Zoom instead of in person, and I miss the in-person interaction, but I get that for many people, this is getting really tough, and it's going to be really easy for me to say again because I'm kind of enjoying it, but there is something in that hardship, there is something in that toughness that is really great for us. And I am the ultimate optimist, and I know that this is a rough experience, and I know that this is like on another level. This is an existential crisis for humanity, what we're going through right now. And I should mention also before I finish the talk, I guess, some of you guys have been asking me about my parents. I mentioned before that both of my parents were diagnosed with coronavirus, and they both are free. They are free of symptoms, and they're totally healthy and doing great. And that is not the way that it is for everybody. So if you're going through it, I'm sorry. But this is something that most of us will survive, and this is something that we will come out the other end changed. And I believe that this is going to change all of us on an individual level, but also as a society, as a world, and really the entire planet will be changed. So again, this is up to us, the perspective that we have on this and the perspective that we gain at the other end. This could either be just a terrible thing that kills a bunch of people, or it could be a terrible thing that kills a bunch of people that we really learn from and that we become stronger from. And we come out of it better able to endure. We come out of it smarter. We come out of it more creative and better able to not just survive, but thrive in whatever situation we find ourselves in. So as you meditate tonight, for some people, meditation is its own hardship. I get it. When your mind wants to travel to wherever it goes, to whatever kind of distraction is present for you, just bring it back and use that as an opportunity. The hardest meditations, the most brutal ones where it's just hard to sit still and your mind is wandering the entire time, those are oftentimes the ones that are the best for us. So no excuse. Sit comfortably, but not too comfortably.